Ladies and gentlemen, from the studios in the wrestling capital of the South, it's another terrific episode of The BENGEBUSTER Show. Please welcome your host, Tony Binge.
All right, everyone, welcome to The BENGEBUSTER Show, coming to you live this week from the studios in the wrestling capital of the South. And right now, I want to bring on my co-host, cohort, co-conspirator. I'm talking about Chris Rock and Roll Plano. Chris, what is going on?
Whoo, terrific, Tony. Another week is upon us. I'm excited about tonight's show. We have a lot to talk about going on in the professional wrestling world, the music scene. Whoo, we're in the midst of the dog days of summer here.
I'm telling you. And Chris, talking about some huge news coming this past week, man, from Titan Towers, the man himself, Vince McMahon, announcing his retirement. That was a shocker. From what do you think?
I mean, Tony, Vince McMahon has been in the forefront of wrestling news over the last several weeks with some, breaking news of behind-the-scene payoffs, possible affairs. God only knows what's going to come out of this thing. And now all of a sudden, this week, it was announced that, Triple H was coming back to the WWE to regain his role again. We know Stephanie McMahon has taken over as interim CEO or CEO of the company, and then all of a sudden, Mr. McMahon, the chairman, has now retired and stepped down from his position, probably with pressure from the board of directors, pressures internally, and just externally, as no longer really wanting to be the face of the organization.
Yeah, I know. I think there's a whole lot more to that than meets the eye, kind of like the Transformers. We're just going to have to kind of hang low and keep our eyes peeled and ears listening just to see what that is. But this Sunday, Chris, it's the big match, the final match of Nature Boy Ric Flair. That is coming up this week on pay-per-view. Right now, we're going to take a real quick commercial break and come back. When we get back, Chris and I are going to be talking about Ric Flair's last match coming up right after this.
Jim Crockett Promotions presents Ric Flair's Last Match, July 31st at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium. StarCast Weekend in Nashville, bringing wrestling companies together for one of the most unique cards ever assembled. Main evented by Ric Flair's Last Match. Tickets are on sale right now at RicFlairsLastMatch.com. And you can catch the show live streaming on pay-per-view and Fight TV for only $34.99. Ric Flair's Last Match. Walk in that aisle one more time for the last time. StarCast is presented in part by ProWrestlingTees.com. T-shirts designed and sold by over 2,500 pro wrestlers. By Lenny Bakken, certified financial planner. And by Powerbomb Pizza. Pizza crafted and sold by pro wrestlers. Powerbomb Pizza, powered by Kitch Data.
All right, fans, we are back here on the BENGEBUSTER Show. Chris, just in a few short days, Ric Flair is going to be lacing up the boots, pulling up the trunks, putting on the robe, and walking that aisle one more time. And man, it just seems like over the last few weeks, it's all blown up between he, Jay Lethal, and Jeff Jarrett, and now Rick has brought on his son-in-law to team up with him. Chris, I think this tag match is going to be one for the ages. No pun intended.
You're right, Tony. Nashville, Tennessee, over the next several days, this upcoming weekend, will be the epicenter of professional wrestling here in the United States and Canada, Mexico, around the world, as there are numerous wrestling events taking place in Nashville throughout Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be capped off Sunday night by the final match. We've been told this is the final match. I hope deep down it is the final match for Ric Flair. And, he can walk that aisle, do his thing, And, I hope he can go back walking that aisle. It's going to be tough for him. It's going to be tough for him, however this match ends. It's going to be very tough for him to exit out of that squared circle and take that walk back to that locker room, knowing this is your last time. That's going to be so tough. You think the walk down is going to be tough? The walk back is going to be much, much tougher. And I hope if he can get back to the locker room, he will be satisfied saying this is his final match. And for him, I hope it is.
Yeah. And not only this weekend is it going to be Ric Flair's final match, but it's also one more what they call it, the one last ride for the Four Horsemen. I'm talking about they're all going to be getting together. Ric Flair, Lex Luger, Barry Windham, Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, and J.J. Dillon. They're going to be there, and also the roast of Ric Flair, which would be really cool to see and witness. That's coming up this weekend as well. But what everybody is waiting on and waiting to see is this tag team grudge match that has really blown up over the last few weeks between Ric Flair, Jay Lethal, and Jeff Jarrett. It is a main event caliber here and taking place in Nashville, Tennessee. That is coming up this weekend. So if you can't be in Nashville, you can still see it on pay-per-view and on Fight. Just log into the website, and it's very easy to navigate, go through there, pick what you want to see. I believe they have a package deal where you can watch the whole thing, or you can break it up into certain things like just the last match, or you want to watch the Horsemen, or you want to see the roast. Personally, Chris, I think myself, I'm possibly thinking of getting the roast and then of course the last match. But then again, I may just get the last match, or I might just wait till Monday and find out what happened. Not sure yet, but I know it's going to be a great event, and I know everybody involved looking forward to it. I just found out today, Chris, that the commentators for this huge event is going to be none other than the voices of our childhood, the voices of Jim Crockett Promotions, David Crockett, Tony Schiavone calling all the matches. It's going to be something else.
Well, it's going to be great. The voices of the NWA and WCW on Superstation WTBS from back in the day, 6:05 Saturday night. You had to turn it on, and it's going to be great. For me, honestly, Tony, with social media and technology, it wouldn't be surprised if this match was up online within an hour of it taking place, just by people filming it from their phones or with tablets or whatever they're doing that are in the crowd. That's just me. Personally, but I mean, I think there still remains that I'm still trying to wrap my hands around it all to an extent. Nashville, the whole thing still just doesn't resonate with me, that they're going to have his final match in Nashville. It was a city that Flair rarely wrestled in, if at all, especially in his NWA heyday. It was not a stop on the NWA tour at all. I think maybe the closest they may have came was Johnson City, if I'm not mistaken.
You're 100% right.
Right, so, the opponents, the whole thing, from the start of who the partners, opponents would be, it's been kind of a carousel, And then I'm also thinking of what is the production of this program going to be like from a television standpoint? Camera shoots, just overall quality and production. I'm sure it'll be top notch, but there's always that, this is a one-off.
Yeah.
This is not, we're filming every Monday night. So there's a lot, to going into this, and then you just want it to be and I think honestly, there probably are going to be some really good quality matches on the undercard that might catch some people off guard because there's just so much focus on the final match, the main event, that it's like, well, who is on the rest of the card? Or really what's going on? Because again, the buildups for this, these are all kind of one-off matches in Nashville, and there's no follow-up. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic.
It definitely is, and I know another match that I'm looking forward to is seeing the one half of the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and his son, taking on Brock Anderson and Brian Pillman's son. That is I think that's going to be a really good match. It's kind of like, it's getting everybody, from all eras locked in on this match.
Yeah.
So that's definitely going to be something to see as well.
Absolutely. It's a throwback to yesteryear, to what's happening now in professional wrestling. And there's an international flavor to this show just by the other promotions and talent that they're using, which is different. It's unique. It'll be good entertainment for a Sunday night. The Nashville Auditorium is going to be on fire. It's a big weekend in Nashville with New Japan's in town. Obviously, it's SummerSlam weekend, which is actually a little traditionally earlier than in prior summers. SummerSlam is usually towards the middle August time frame, or even towards the end of August. It's somewhat early this year for whatever reason, at least in my mind. I never known it to be in July personally, but there's just shifts happening in wrestling. But it just seems Nashville has, for whatever reason, this synergy of becoming the epicenter of wrestling, at least for the last weekend of July 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say, if you're a wrestling fan, you're definitely going to get your fix this weekend with, it seems like all the major companies are involved. Even we got WWE, like you said, their big pay-per-view, SummerSlam. And of course, I look for SummerSlam to be a lot different than I think what was planned earlier after the announcement of Mr. McMahon retiring. And of course, we're going to get more into that in just a few minutes. But one thing I do want to bring up, Chris, is tomorrow, Friday, 5:30 p.m. and good old Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina, at a place called Resident Culture. And that place is located at 2101 Central Avenue in Charlotte. The NAWA is bringing Rage in the Cage. I mean, what more can a Carolina boy ask for? Food trucks, beer, and wrestling. Of course, as you know, there's only one thing missing, and we know what that is: girls, girls, girls. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of those in the crowd on hand to witness the Rage in the Cage put on by the NAWA. Bell time is 5:30, and yours truly is going to be there. And Chris, I know that you have a prior engagement with the Jason Aldean show coming to Charlotte. You'll be busy with that, but I'm going to be at the Rage in the Cage, and I'm hoping that on next week's podcast, I will announce a new championship that I'm going to win. I just know it. I feel it in my body and my brain and my mind. And I'm ready for that. But not only that, next week we have an exciting guest. Corey Etzel is coming back to the show. A lot of you fans may remember he was on, this past year. He is coming back, and he is also he actually just become a champion in a couple of organizations. So we're going to be talking to him about that, and all that's coming up next week. But right now we got one more quick break, and when we come back, it is the Vince McMahon story coming up next on the Binge Buster Show.
surprise for you from Mr. McDaddy. Ruthless aggression. I'm gonna stop being so damn nice. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're gonna burn in hell. You mess with me, I'll make hell look like Sunday school. I own my own competition. Shut up! Drinking on the job? What the hell is this? The WWF is mine. WCW is buried. Anything about the original ECW sucks. Shut up! There is no chance in hell. Suck it! Stand up, you make me sick. If you're an imbecile and you're from Hartford, you'll say, that's my point. I'm gonna kill it! Oh, hell no! Your record sucks! What the hell kind of name is Dreamer? Michael Cole! Shut up! You're fired. You're fired! You're fired! You're fired! Stone Cold, screw you! You're fired! It's all about the money. I'm your genetic jackhammer. You will worship me. It's me, Austin! Mr. Sucko. Ah! Where's my picture? Where's my football? Handsome son of a... Peace out, my brothers. Daddy's coming home. She just took a trump.
Brett screwed Brett.
You deserve to be screwed! You deserve to be screwed! I will never, ever forgive your mother for giving birth to you. Life sucks, and then you die.
All right, fans, we are back here on the Binge Buster Show. Chris, man, there have been a lot of wrestling promoters in the world, but none will ever be as great as Vincent Kennedy McMahon. He was born August the 24th, 1945, and of all places, Pinehurst, North Carolina. He went to college at East Carolina University. So even though a lot of people think that, he's associated from being from Connecticut, yeah, he did live there, but he is a Carolina boy, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I'm learning some facts that I did not know that you're pulling out of the woodwork. But no, Vince McMahon, Tony, he inherited the business, or from his father, Vince Senior. When Vince Senior was running it, it truly was a territorial organization. Primarily in the Northeast and then select major markets in the U.S. But it was primarily from Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, up through the Northeast, the WWF at that time, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And then, when Vince took it over and purchased it from his dad, he just had a vision that he could take this thing national. And that really was his vision. And he came in at the right time. He earned his stripes, and Vince McMahon. The WWF. It's kind of the same parallel story to MTV. I mean, they capitalized on cable television, the rise of cable and syndication TV, and that's really how it went national from there. And Hulk Hogan comes out of nowhere, and you start making all these wrestlers into personalities and characters, and the rest is history. In WrestleMania, and then it goes on, and that's where they are today. But you got to give it up to Vince McMahon. He had a vision that came to fruition, and where he thought wrestling can go to.
Yeah, he started out as a commentator for his dad. Mm-hmm. He commentated in the 70s, and then in the 80s, early 80s, he purchased the company from his father. But he had this vision of not being just a regional promotion like all the other companies were at the time. He wanted to be worldwide. He began expanding the company nationally by promoting in areas outside of the company's Northeast stomping grounds, and started signing talent from other companies from like the AWA. He recruited Hulk Hogan in 1984, and pretty much it seemed like overnight Hogan become a megastar, not only co-starring in Rocky, but also Hogan had his own cartoon. The Rock and Wrestling Connection started with Cyndi Lauper and MTV. And then, of course, on March the 31st, 1985, Vince came up with WrestleMania. And it was held at Madison Square Garden, but it was also sold on closed-circuit television in various markets throughout the United States. And McMahon's success of birthing WrestleMania in the 80s had a significant impact on professional wrestling in the 1980s, and which I think helped, it kind of helped give us what they call the golden age era of wrestling. The 80s, man, wrestling was very hot. It was worldwide, but at the time, not only did you have the WWF, but you had the NWA, you had World Class Championship Wrestling, and it just seems like there was wrestling companies all over the world. But Vince was definitely, way ahead of his time. I know a lot of people were like scratching their head, going, "Why does he have Liberace here? Why does he have that?" But what he was doing was he was getting that national exposure, and then later on having Saturday Night's Main Event taking place on first it started off on MTV, and then from there it branched off to NBC. And then from that, I mean, we could talk for hours about all the things that happened in the 80s. And, of course, then the 90s come around. He started calling out the new generation era. He started going from the big guys like Hogan and Andre to smaller, faster guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. And then in 1999, we can never forget the Monday Night Wars. And, of course, he purchased, for 8, so all those weeks went by as the WCW and WWE fought over who was going to be the number one Monday night television show. But then all that came to an end on March the 23rd, 2001. Incidentally, that was my birthday. But we find out that McMahon purchased WCW, and the Monday Night Wars came to an end. Again, Mr. McMahon victorious because of his thought process, and he's like I said, he's a promoter that no one will ever replicate. I don't think in our lifetime, at least, Chris.
Oh no. There will not be another promoter like Vince McMahon. It's very mainstream corporate now. And I'm going to say this, Tony. When the WWF, when it went on cable television and it went nationwide, I still feel organically the other organizations that were still territorial reaped benefits off of what the WWF did, because it opened up everyone's eyes. And they're like, okay, wow, there's wrestling on ESPN, there's wrestling on WTBS, there's wrestling in local markets, and other organizations like the NWA and World Class and the AWA and the UWF and others. I think they reaped off of that trickle-down effect in promoting their talent and what they were doing in wrestling as well. I think we all knew at that time, okay, the WWF is head and shoulders above those groups, but there was also some very good wrestling, still regionally going on as well. And I think everyone benefited from it at some level along the way.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, everybody benefited. When I say everybody, I'm talking about all the promoters. They all benefited because of the mainstream media that the WWF and Vince McMahon was causing in their 80s, and then of course into the 90s too. I know we say this all the time. Now's a great time to be a wrestling fan, but the best time to have been a wrestling fan was in the 80s when you and I were growing up, and we saw the wrestling boom of the 80s. We also saw it fizzle out, and we also saw Vince bring it back, to what it is today. But not only was he a wrestling promoter, is he a wrestling promoter, but he also had that vision of, okay, I'm going to get away from this wrestling name, and we're going to become sports entertainers.
Right.
And then from there, he started, making action figures and making ice cream, and it's almost like it's almost like he was the Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley of wrestling, because he figured out a way to put a wrestler's face on everything under the moon, sun, and stars. But I think the coolest thing that he ever done, and I had this vision when I was a kid, but I had no idea how to pull it off. But I remember as a kid telling my dad, I wish that there was a channel I could turn on where all it shows is wrestling. That's wrestling 24 hours a day. And my dad's like, son, that I don't think that ever happened. Of course, Dad passed away and he could see this, but in 2014, Vince McMahon embarked on a number of WWE related ventures. But the most important one that year was he came out with the WWE Network, and it was basically like Netflix of wrestling. You could watch anything and everything, and I thought that was a really cool concept, and just an awesome time. Now we can go back because of Vince McMahon and the WWE Network, and we can go back and watch and relive those childhood days and some of those real classic matches.
I mean, absolutely. There's one thing I want to touch upon here. When Vince McMahon, when WCW was starting to pluck talent out of the WWF, first it was Scott Hall. Okay. Then it was Kevin Nash. Okay. Then when they got Hogan, I think some people may have thought, wow, the WWF is all done. They lost the number one guy. They lost the face of the organization. And at one point, WCW was ahead of the WWF in the ratings and the wars and what was going on. And there were probably some shaky times, but then Vince McMahon got creative, and all of a sudden here comes, Dwayne Johnson becomes The Rock. And then Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker. And you have all these elements, and he just knew how to make characters out of, guys that were wrestlers in the ring. And it was because I would have thought, you lose Hulk Hogan, you're done. And for some organizations, some regional groups, they would have been crushed. But he has survived over the decades, and the WWE is the standard. Have they ever had the greatest wrestlers in the world? They've had many great wrestlers, but there have been other great wrestlers in other groups as well. Whoever thought that Ric Flair one day would wrestle in the WWF? I think at one point, Tony, it was maybe unimaginable that Ric Flair would wrestle there, but he did. He took the world. The NWA Championship World Belt, and brought it to the WWF. And so there were things that happened that I think you and I sitting in the stands would say that would never, ever happen.
Right.
But it did.
It happened.
So I think that's what makes wrestling so great. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's a man's soap opera, and it's Broadway, it's sports, it's everything wrapped in one. And all that is, has to be commended because of the visionary of Vince McMahon. Now, unfortunately, as the years go by, WWE will venture out and do several things, but then also will come back, and of course, there's always that fall from grace. And following claims of hush money agreements, Mr. McMahon paid over alleged affairs with former WWE employees. Vince McMahon stepped down as CEO and chairman of WWE on June the 17th, pending the conclusion of an internal investigation, and placed his daughter Stephanie in charge. But on July 22nd, Mr. McMahon announced his retirement, and thus now we are actually in, back in the 90s, Chris, we heard of the McMahon Helmsley era, and now here we are, 2022, and it's about to be all the same all over again, except this time they are going to be in charge from here on out.
Yeah, that's the way it's looking like it. This is taking place at a interesting time. You're going into one of your, I would say second or third top pay-per-view of the year outside of WrestleMania, stepping down just days before. This, I believe I read online that Triple H is going to have a hand in all the storylines this Sunday as well. So it's an interesting time to be in the WWE. I also read earlier Vince McMahon sold a very large share of his stock either yesterday or today to the tune of nearly $3 million, or forfeited it, I believe. So, there are things happening within. I don't know if I want to be in the McMahon household right now.
Right. Yeah.
With things that are happening. And it must be some interesting conversations around the breakfast or dinner or lunch table. But they're going to persevere some way, somehow. But Vince McMahon, this is a story that I think is going to have some layers and some chapters to it. Just for the WWE standpoint, they need to focus on the product in the ring and the promotion of their talent in the ring to help deflect a lot of what's going to be happening outside the ring. And I'm sure they're going to have their top people in place and for damage control.
Yeah, I believe so. I know I'm sure he's lawyered up, and we're just kind of waiting to see where all these allegations of hush money actually how it pans out. But at the end of the day, I hope everything works out for Mr. McMahon. But I think that now WWE is going to go into a whole different direction. And I think that now I know they announced last week of going to a PG-13 or PG-14 rating. So I'm looking forward to that, and but I'm looking forward to seeing how Triple H and Stephanie can take the WWE and turn it around, and hopefully, I would love to see wrestling get back to how it was in the '90s, being red hot. You didn't know what was going to happen from show to show, who's going to show up, who's going to leave. That's the kind of stuff that makes me a wrestling fan, and I enjoy. And of course, I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing that again. But Chris, next week we got our guest Corey Etzel's coming on the show. He's going to be talking about, like I said, he'll be talking about his latest championships and how he left wrestling, came back, and now he's on fire all over again. And of course, next week, fans, we hope to have some results of Ric Flair's last match. I'm sure we'll have a big thing to talk about next week. Chris, tomorrow you got your Jason Aldean show. I got my big wrestling match. It's going to be a great weekend.
Man, it's going to be a great weekend, Tony. And before we get into that, looking forward to catching up with Corey next week. I know he's going to have some great stories for us and some backdrop on what's going on in his area. But boy, and I know you're fired up for the NAWA show tomorrow night. Resident Culture Brewing's going to be on fire. I've heard they brewed extra beer this week just for tomorrow night. And wishing you the best of luck stepping in the squared circle. And then that big steel cage match is going to tear the place down to end the evening. I'm sure. And SummerSlam, Ric Flair's final match. It's wide open this weekend. And yes, concerts. Jason Aldean tomorrow night. The summer concert season keeps moving along. And but Tony, I gotta think Sunday night. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to go down. It's going to be a flurry to the finish. It's going to be anticlimactic. But I got to think the dirtiest player in the game is somehow going to come out on top Sunday night. And I don't know if it's going to be clean. I don't think it's going to be clean. No. But somehow, I think the old Ric Flair of back in the day, you're going to see catch some people off guard at the very end. I just cannot see him not having his hand raised in the middle of the ring. I would be shocked.
Yeah, and I know I was talking to Flair earlier this week, and he told me, he said, Tony, I'm bringing 2 blades, one for me, one for Jarrett. So I know he's ready. Man, if golly, Nashville's going to be on fire this week, and I'm sure Flair is going to bleed from his head to his boots, and it's definitely going to be a bloodbath. And man, it's definitely going to be a match for the ages. No, like I said, no pun intended. But it's going to be a great match. I've seen Flair's workouts. He has put everything, everything into this match. And I regardless of what people say, I think we're all going to be impressed with the performance that the Nature Boy puts out this coming Sunday.
I believe so. I mean, I can see all 4 of these guys, especially Flair's son-in-law, who's really the young buck in this thing, looking over their shoulder. I mean, if I'm Lethal and Jarrett, I know I'm looking over my shoulder, and I'm not just talking the locker room aisle either, because if there's horsemen in the building, they could be coming from any angles. It wouldn't be surprised if some came out from under the ring.
Yep. You just never know.
So, and if I'm Flair, I'm maybe looking over my shoulder as well. I mean, you can't trust a Jeff Jarrett or a Jay Lethal. I won't trust anyone stepping into the squared circle, because I think if anything could happen, this is the show it's going to happen at. And, I still think at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, Flair's going to end up somehow on top, walking back to the locker room with the spotlights glaring on him, and only as Ric Flair fashion can do it.
Yep, that's for sure. Well, fans, like I said, make sure you check out Ric Flair's last match this weekend. If you're in Charlotte, come by and see me at Resident Culture, or go hang out with Chris at the Jason Aldean Show. There's lots to do this weekend, but that's going to wrap us up this week, and we will see you next week here on the Binge Buster Show.
Download us on your favorite podcast platform.